2021, Dealing with Chaos in Nature. Dr. Abhinav works in the field of experimental condensed matter physics. His area of research includes thin films, magnetic semiconductors, and correlated electron materials. Sir has completed his PhD from Inter-University Accelerator Center, New Delhi. Further, he has done his postdoc from Pohang Accelerator Lab, which is located in South Korea, where he worked on 2A beamline. As we all know that in September 2021, Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to Professors Yukaro Manabe and Klaus Hasselmann, who shared half the prize for the physical modeling of Earth's climate, quantifying variability, and reliably predicting global warming. Further, Professor Giorgio Parisi, who received one half of the prize for the discovery of the interplay of disorder and fluctuations in physical systems from atomic to planetary scales. Complex systems include weather, solids, social interaction, computer, biology, and many more. Almost all fields of study include complex systems, but unfortunately, they are not taught at undergraduate or postgraduate level. This makes understanding the importance of this prize very difficult for students. But today, Abhinav sir will enlighten us about complex systems and unravel the physics behind this year's Nobel Prize. So, I would like to invite Dr. Abhinav sir to deliver the talk.
I think the screen is also sharing. Huh? Okay, let me try once more. Online, everyone can hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. There is no option to share screen. Someone else is sharing screen? Okay. Okay. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Am I audible on this?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you, Vidhi, and welcome, Pathak sir. Vishal is there, I think, from NPL, and several of our students are there online. Uh, Vidhi has already given a very nice introduction to today's topic that we are discussing. As the topic is there, that I'll discuss about what is the physics of Nobel Prize in this year's Nobel Prize in physics. Again, it is not my field. I was just as perplexed as all of you. Like, what is this? What kind of a Nobel Prize is this, and what field is it? Like, I have never myself studied about this particular field. So I've been struggling for last 2-3 weeks to understand all this, and that is what I want to present today. So this is the spoiler alert that whenever you are going to watch any movie, like they always try to hide the main concept, but this is the main idea of the whole talk. That even if you know all the fundamental laws at the very basic nature, that is what generally particle physicists do. Even in that case, also you cannot build the universe out of it. That means if you know all the rules, even in that case, you cannot explain all the properties of a complex system. So what is complex system, that I will tell you later. And this guy, he's PW Anderson, and he is one of the most renowned scientists of the last century. He was a experimental he was a condensed matter theorist, and a lot of development that has happened in physics, not only.
Abhinav,
Yes sir,
Abhinav,
yes sir, yes sir.
I think you have already given the definition of cup.
Yeah,
complex system, because
that
which cannot be described by these laws. That is the
exactly,
complex system.
exactly, sir. So that
Yes.
is why I said that this is the spoiler alert for the whole talk. That this
Yes.
is the main idea. So this P.W. Anderson, he has not only contributed in condensed matter physics, that even in the particle physics also, even the Higgs mechanism that was proposed, it was said that it was his original idea of the symmetry breaking that Higgs later on applied to again Higgs mechanism. So first things first, I actually Vidhi has already very well covered all of these things. That there are two halves of this year's Nobel Prize. One is for Manabe Hasselman, and you can see that what they have done is that they have given us some models through which we can reliably predict the climate or weather. And the other half, which was even difficult to understand, was this work by Parisi. Giorgio Parisi. So we will see that Giorgio Parisi has worked in the system of what are known as spin glasses. And Kiran sir is with us, so he is another expert in all these things. So hopefully he'll be able to add few things. So if you look at the statement of this year's like prize, then you will see that there are some terms which do not look related to each other, such as climate, global warming, disorder and fluctuations. And you can see that what kind of systems, what kind of scales we are talking about, from atomic to planetary scales. That means we are talking about atoms, we are talking about planets and everything. So this is somehow it seems so disconnected, and I hope I'll be able to like convince you that how they are connected with each other. Now, we will not consider quantum mechanics, we will only consider classical mechanics. And according to classical mechanics, in that also, I'm not going to talk about electromagnetism, it is just Newton's law. And Newton's laws are very deterministic. You tell me what are the initial conditions, I'll tell you what the future will be. So that is represented by what is known as Laplace's demon. So in case of Laplace demon, what it says is that if, again, the same thing that I told you before, that if you tell me the initial conditions, I'll tell you the future. So here is this he has this machine which is available to him, to this particular demon, and it knows everything. It knows all the conditions, all every universal condition this guy knows. So he can tell you the future. Now, from quantum mechanics, obviously we know that is not correct, but even classically also, that is what I want to convey today, is that even classically also, even though the equations, the laws are very, very simple, but still the determinism is not there. You cannot predict the future. So this is the here you have three systems. One is atom, one is a human being, and the other one is a, let us say, a neutron star. So which system is simple and which system is complex? So obviously atom is probably the simplest system. I think everyone will agree that it is a very simple system. A human being obviously is a very, very complicated system. What about a star? Now it may appear that number of atoms in star are far, 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 far greater than the number of atoms those are present in a human being. So you might assume that a star is a more complex system, but that is actually not true. Whenever you have a star which has a very high gravity, for example, a neutron star, what it does is the gravity crushes all the complexity, and then the system becomes comparatively. So this is just a very simple like comparison. What is a simple system? What is a complex system? You should not assume that size determines the complexity. It doesn't. What determines the complexity? That we will see. These systems are very, very difficult to predict. They are, you cannot handle them numerically or like analytically, such systems. Why? Because they have enormous number of components, and all those components are interacting with each other. This leads to some concepts of chance and chaos that we will see later on, that what I mean by these concepts. So let us discuss them. Now, I have taken this example where I'm talking about population dynamics. For example, if you have, if a population, the current population is given to you, and you are asked the question, what will happen to the next generation? If this is the population right now, what will happen in the next generation? So that kind of question we are talking about, and that is what I'm representing here as population dynamics. And what, and which population we are looking at? We are not looking at the population of the frog, but we are looking at the population of this insect. So when you are looking at the population of this particular insect, then you will see that next generation population depends upon reproduction rate, like for how many babies they are having. The more number of babies they are having, the larger will be the population. That is what we expect. But when the population increases, then what happens is, then there are more predators. They are food for more predators. So therefore, actually their population will decrease, because other, for example, frog in this particular case, that frog will have more food. Okay. Another problem is, for example, even if this frog is not there, even in that case also, if the population of insect is increasing too much, then what will happen is they will eat up all the food. This generation will eat up all the food. Therefore, for the next generation, what will happen is the food that will be available will be very less, and therefore that population will decrease. So you see, the thing is not so simple, but here you have this feedback, like reproduction rate is obviously there, but even if you increase the population, then also there is a negative feedback that will decrease the population. So this is a classical complex system, and it is determined by a very, very simple equation, which we will call as the logistic equation. So let us look, this is the logistic equation. You see, it is a very simple equation. Xn represents what is the population in the present generation. Xn plus 1 means what will be the population in the next generation. So here A is the reproduction rate, all right, and you can see 1 minus X factor is there. That means again, if you increase the X, the next generation population will actually have a negative feedback. Okay, so it is a very, very simple equation, and there is nothing to worry about it, at least so far. And here what happens is that we have restricted the value of X from 0 to 1. That means we are normalizing it with respect to some constant value. Okay, so that the whole population, it is represented by a number between 0 and 1. A is the control parameter, which we have previously talked as the reproduction rate. That is what this control parameter is, and its characteristics, you can see that it is a very simple equation. Okay, it has the feedback mechanism. It is completely deterministic. If I tell you the value of xn, you can tell me the exact value of xn plus 1. So it is a deterministic equation. There is nothing complicated about it, and it is a non-linear equation. Non-linear means that if you double the population of present generation, it does not mean that the next generation will have double population. Okay, so that is what is meant by a non-linear system, and it applies to many fields. We are just considering the biology part of it, where we are talking about the population dynamics, but it applies to many fields. Now, what do we expect out of this equation? Generally, what we expect is, we know that there is reproduction rate, there is negative feedback. Therefore, what we expect is that this probably generation will go up or down, something like that, and then it should settle. The generation, with increasing generation, the population should settle. And that is what indeed that happens. But, and we will represent that as x infinity. That means we are going far away into the generations, lot of generations forward we are looking. There is no upper limit for A actually, but we restrict ourselves from 1 to 4. We will restrict to this, because this will contain all the features that we want to talk about. For convergence to x infinity, the value of A should be between 1 and 3. So nothing important happens between 1 and 3. We will see, and indeed it will happen that the population will go up and down, and then it will become constant. But the real fun starts when x is increased beyond 3. I'll call this x infinity as attractor. Why I'll call it as an attractor? Because you will see that when we are varying this reproduction rate, the population will go up and down, but it will be attracted towards this value, something like this. So that is why we call it as an attractor. All right, so this is what I have plotted. Here you can see that I have plotted for A 1.2, and in case of 1.2, which is represented by the black curve, you can see that the population is decreasing fairly fast, and then it is saturated. In case of blue curve, which is for reproduction rate of 2.5, you can again see that there are some initial oscillations are there, and then again it is settling down. For 2.9, you can see that the oscillations are again traveling to a farther distance, but if we go long enough in the generation, then again it will settle down. Okay, so these are the attractors. These dotted lines are the attractors for these values of reproduction rate. So as I said, that the real fun starts when you actually increase the reproduction rate beyond 3. And now you will see what happens is that when the value is 2.9, just below 3, then again the oscillations are there, but again they are settling down. But when A is equal to 3 or 3.1, you will see that the population keeps oscillating from one generation to another generation. And now you will see that doesn't matter how far along the generation you go, they will keep oscillating. Okay, so we call this as bifurcation. Previously, you had only one attractor. Now that one attractor has bifurcated into two. And that is why that population is oscillating between the lower attractor and the upper attractor. Okay, all right. So this looks more like academics. Nothing important seems to be there, but this is the real picture. Now, if I look at these bifurcations, then you will see that on the x-axis I have the reproduction rate or A control parameter, and on the x I have the population. So that bifurcation you can clearly see at around 3, this bifurcation is starting, and in each branch again the bifurcation is happening, and again in those branches also that bifurcation is happening. Okay, so such kind of bifurcation, when they are repeatedly happening, then you get structures what are known as fractals. Okay, so I'll come to fractals later on, but what I wanted to show here is that even out of this deterministic equation where you see the shaded parts, these shaded parts represent the random values, that after a certain value of control parameter, the final values that you get out of that completely deterministic equation, the values that you get are actually random. They are not obviously completely random, they have a lower bound and they have an upper bound, but still in those bounds those values are random. Random in the sense that even if you change your starting population by a very small amount, the final population that you will get, you cannot predict that population. Okay, and this is what is known as chaos, that it is complete chaos. You don't know, you cannot predict that what is going to happen. Okay, and such kind of chaos obviously we know that happens in society as well. Okay, that when a mob is has gathered, what will happen, what will be the mood of that mob, you cannot control that. Even the mob, the people who are constituting the mob, even in some cases even they cannot control what will be the overall behavior of the mob. Okay, so such kind of systems are complex systems and they are chaotic around after some point. Okay, so I think I have discussed all these points about chaos, that they have a feedback. The second point is the sensitivity to the initial condition. That is what I was saying, that this is where chaos is, that even if you change the sensitivity, the initial conditions by a very minute amount, even in that case also the final result you will get, you cannot predict that. The laws are very simple. You saw that the logistic equation that we started with, that was a very simple deterministic equation. There was nothing fancy about it. It was just a quadratic equation, that's all. All right, so the components are easy to explain but impossible to predict. You cannot say, that is what I was saying about chaos, that you cannot predict what is going to happen in the future, even if the equations are completely deterministic, even that in that case also. And on the surface you might see that everything is complex, but deep down the laws are very simple. Okay, so what weather has to do with all this? So and that is how we are related to this Nobel Prize. This weather itself, as it turns out, is chaotic. Okay, so this is the story. Like previously what they did was they had handheld calculators, they knew the hydrodynamics equations. Okay, but they did not have the supercomputers or computers. So what they were doing calculations with the manual calculator, and they made a very large grid of the earth, and then said, all right, if this is the humidity, this is the temperature right now, then what will happen to the humidity and temperature, let us say, after 1 month. So that is what they were calculating, and it was assumed that if you make the grid finer and finer, you will get more and more accurate results. That is what was assumed, and that is why you require supercomputers for calculation of weather. But did it happen? So Ed Lorenz is one of the main person in all of this. So he was working at MIT and he got a new computer. So he was using his computer to predict weather. So what he did was, He made this toy model. We don't have to bother what this toy model is or what these quantities is. So he was trying to like simulate these quantities, and he made the calculation. Let us say that he started from now. He knew what is the temperature now. He knew what is the humidity now, and he said, "All right, let us predict for next 5 months." Let us say he made the calculations. All right. Now he wanted to extend his calculation. So what he did was, he, let us say, he took the value. Previously what used to happen is, like, you have a computer and then you have a printer. Whatever values are being calculated, they are printed on a paper. So when you are printing, the computer is calculating till 6th decimal place. Now he said, my model is a toy model, it is not going to give me very accurate results, so let me truncate it till the 3rd decimal place. Okay, so he truncated till 3rd decimal place and printed on a printer. Now when he wanted to extend his calculation, so what he said was, okay, after 1 month, these are the parameters that I should get. Now he used those as initial conditions so that he can predict further. He went for a coffee break. After the coffee break, when he came back, then he tried to compare previous calculations and the present calculations. So after some time, the calculations were matching with each other. But after 10 or 15 days, they widely varied from each other. And they were so different from each other that you can't even tell that the same conditions were used, the same initial conditions were used. So he was like, maybe my computer has gone bad. They were based on vacuum tubes, etc. So he thought like maybe some vacuum tube is not working properly or something like that. But then he realized what the problem was. The problem was that inside the computer, the whole digit was 0.504123, something like that. So he truncated the last 3 parts, the last 3 digits. He input only first 3 digits. Now the difference is very, very, very small, 1 in 10,000. That is what the difference is. But still, even this very, very, very slight difference in the initial condition led to a very, very different final result. Okay, so that is why we call these systems as chaotic system, and that is why this weather is we call that the weather is chaotic. So that is, by the way, known as the butterfly effect. I will not go into the details of this graph, but if you are fond of graphs, then you can see the butterfly effect here also. What the butterfly effect is, because the weather is chaotic, therefore what Lorentz said was, if a butterfly is flapping its wing in Brazil, will it bring a tornado after some time in Texas? Why? Because the fluttering of butterfly wings are a very, very small change in the initial conditions. Okay, so that is why it is known as the butterfly effect. This very, very sensitive dependence on the initial conditions. So this is again the definition given by Lorentz. What he said was that the present determines the future, but does the approximate present determines approximate future? No, it doesn't. That is what chaos is. Okay, so this kind of assignment, I think that all of my MSc students might have done. Like, this double pendulum is given to you. They ask you to calculate the Lagrangian, and then you have to find the equations of motion. Okay, you find some differential equations and you leave it there. You don't actually solve the differential equation to obtain the motion, the dynamics of it. If you do, and if you plot that, this is what it will look like. This double pendulum, the trajectory of this double pendulum looks quite chaotic. Even though it is deterministic, it is chaotic. Now what I will do is, I will show you a cartoon where 3 double pendula will be released at approximately the same height. All right, and then you see that after some time what happens to the trajectory. Now what we expect is that if we suppose if we are talking about gravity, if we are dropping 2 balls approximately at the same height, they will reach at the bottom at approximately the same time. Okay, but as you can guess, this is not what is going to happen. Now you see that these 3 pendula are very chaotic, but they were actually released from approximately the same height, approximately the same initial conditions. There is a difference of 10 to the power minus 5 between the initial states of these pendula. Okay, so such kind of systems, we call them as chaotic systems. All right. So as I said that we will talk about fractals as well. Okay, now fractals, you can, as I told you before, what was happening is that each branch was bifurcating. So you can see that kind of bifurcation here also. Okay, so this tree is there, then you have a bifurcation. If you go along any branch, that branch itself is getting again bifurcated, that branch is again getting bifurcated, and so on. So such systems are known as self-similar systems. Doesn't matter how much you zoom in, you will again get back the exact same figure as you were having without zooming. Okay, so does it look like any kind of vegetable? Okay, so that is again an example of fractal self-similarity in nature. All right, and this is a very famous figure. If you have ever heard about fractals, then you might have seen this figure, which is known as the Mandelbrot set. Now you see that this set is again plotted using this very simple equation: Zn plus 1 is equal to Zn square plus some complex number. Okay, and if you zoom into this Mandelbrot set, you will see that if you zoom enough, it will appear as if the original system has again appeared. Now you see again it is coming up. Okay, now if I run this animation again and again, if I keep running it, this will keep happening. Doesn't matter how much you zoom in, you will again get the original structure back. Okay, so that is the concept of fractals. Those are important, and you can see that the applications which I have copied obviously from Wikipedia is that it has absolutely mind-boggling applications. And one of the very interesting applications that I saw was in like computer graphics. They wanted to produce this lava, like when the lava is coming out of the volcano, the dynamics of lava that can be modeled using this fractals. Okay, so there are in nature also we have this self similarity in a lot of case, and in computer graphics this is used very repeatedly, these concepts of fractals. So what are the characteristics? I just want to sum up what are the characteristics of these nonlinear systems. Like there are normal or regular regions. Okay, in normal regular regions you will see this bifurcation. For example, these are the normal region, you will see the bifurcation here, and then there are regions of chaos. Okay, and in this region of chaos you will have random values, because even if you change the initial state size very slightly, it will completely change the output. Again, you inside the chaos also you again have normal regions. So this thing will keep on repeating, and that is why you might have seen I wrote order, chaos, order, and then dot, because this thing keeps on going. So what is the recipe for chaos? Again, all these things I've already discussed, like simple laws are there, non-linearity is there, feedback should be there, and all these things leads to sensitivity to initial conditions. Another very important thing, which again I think Dr. Kiran must be knowing more about it in case of materials, is 1 by f noise. So this 1 by f noise, what happens is like if you look at mountains, for example, okay, if you are looking at mountains at various peaks and you correlate how many mountains are there and what is their size, you will see that larger the size, lower the frequency of mountains you have, and lower the size of the peak, the larger the number will be there. Okay, so what is happening here is that the frequency is inversely related to the size, and if you talk in reverse, then you will say that the size is inversely proportional to frequency. Okay, so that is what is represented here, that this size that varies as 1 over f to the power n. Now this exponent n is not so important. Okay, and that is why we call it as 1 over f noise. And this 1 over f noise, why I said that Dr. Kiran might be knowing, because even in devices also we study all these noises. All right, and you can see that we are not talking about electronic devices right now. So this tells you the universality of all these concepts that I am talking about today. Okay, I'll not go into this particular part, but you can see that landslides, avalanches, earthquakes, traffic jams, economics, stock markets, all these things follow this 1 over f noise. That larger the event, lower the frequency of that happening, and smaller the size of it, the larger will be the frequency. But the problem is there is 1 over f noise in weather as well. Weather is a chaotic system, there is 1 over f noise in that, and therefore people think that what the temperature that is increasing, it is not because of us. We can keep using our coal and everything, we can keep using our cars and everything, because it is not because of us, it is just the inherent system. It is just inherent in the system. Okay, but this is the misconception that was removed by Manabe and Hasselmann. Okay, so this is just a brief bio I copied from his web page. So what Manabe did, that is, by the way, the work that got him the Nobel Prize. You can see that it says thermal equilibrium of the atmosphere with a given distribution of relative humidity. Well, it doesn't explain much to me, at least, but if you read the first line, then you will find radiative convective equilibrium of the atmosphere. Rest of the things I'll skip, but these are the few things. Radiative convective equilibrium. So what is radiative convective equilibrium? For example, if you have rays are incident from sun on earth, okay, that is represented, its flux is represented as J in, and the earth reflects back, it again emits back some radiation, which is given by the Stephen Boltzmann law. And if you equilibrate between them, then you find that the temperature, the average temperature of earth should be minus 18 degrees centigrade. Now this minus 18 degrees centigrade is not suitable for life. Okay, so obviously, but because we are living here, so there's something wrong with this picture. And what is wrong with this picture is that you have to include the greenhouse effects. Okay, that whatever radiation is coming from the sun, it is getting reflected, but then again you have these greenhouse effect gases which allow some of the radiation to pass, and some of the radiation is again reflected there. Okay, so I think the lyrics are quite apt here, huh? Anyways, so it gives you an average temperature of 30 degrees centigrade. Okay, and obviously 30 degrees centigrade is more suitable for life. Okay, but this is just the radiation balance, and yes, you can read it later on. All right. Okay. Okay. So I'm running short on time, so I'll not dwell on that. So the point is, actually, such kind of picture can give very wrong results. Okay, and that is where the contribution of Manabe was. That he not only introduced this radiation balance was known before him, but he introduced the convection, the air convection. You know that whenever the air is cold, it will try to sink in, and whenever it is hot, it tries to rise up. So that convective model was developed by Manabe. Okay, and that is where his actually the actual contribution lies. And another very important thing that he told, for example, here you can see that this is just the radiation balance, and this is where the convection effect is. Okay, that he took that into account in his model, and he told us that if you increase the concentration of carbon dioxide, if you double the concentration, then it will lead to an increase of around 2.36 degrees centigrade in Earth's temperature. Now you might think that 2 degrees is not so great, but it is absolutely huge. It can have very drastic effects. If you decrease the temperature of Earth by this much amount, you might enter into ice age. And if you increase it by this amount, then there will be many parts of our world which will be absolutely inhabitable, including desert, including India. And some people are saying that we have to go and live on the poles because all the ice will be melted by them. Okay, and remember that these are chaotic systems. Even if you make a very small change, it leads to absolutely chaotic results. All right, so he gave the 1D model in 1960s, 3D model in 1975. Okay, he used very slow computers, obviously, but his genius was to get all the key features right. And he said that you cannot compete with the complexity of nature. You have to simplify nature, because you are not so great. Doesn't matter how intelligent you think you are, but you are not as intelligent as the nature. So what Manabe tried to do was that he tried to reduce the noise in weather. And what Hasselmann did was he actually introduced noise into the system. He actually he told us, he explained us that how we can make long time climate predictions. And he introduced noise intentionally. So this is what Hasselman looks like. Okay. So if you know, if you have watched any James Bond movie, then I think he looks like Pierce Brosnan. Okay. So like if you look like James Bond and you win a Nobel Prize, what else can you want? Huh? Even James Bond couldn't do that. Huh? Anyways, so this is the work related to the which got him the prize, which says stochastic climate models. Stochastic basically means, if you know Brownian motion that was explained by Einstein, so you assume that there are some random, like what is going to happen next is actually random. Okay, so there is this drunkard model, there is a drunkard here who's drinking, like here, his house is over there. Now whether he will go to left or right, there is an equal probability. He can go this way also and he can go that way also. Okay, so such kind of models are known as stochastic model, and that is what he did. And if you read the first line again, it says the stochastic model of climate variability is considered in which slow change in climate are explained as integral response to continuous random excitation by short period weather disturbances. All right, so I think you have understood everything about it now. Anyway, so what he did was, like obviously, as I told you before, that there is chaos in weather, and the Laplace demon is absolutely wrong. Even if he knows everything, then also he cannot predict what is going to happen in the future. Again, butterfly effect, again I have explained to you. Okay, and I told you that the forecast is not good beyond, let us say, 10 days. Okay, because we don't know the initial conditions that accurately, and you cannot know, by definition you cannot know. So again, this is what I told you before also, that what he said was, like when we are looking at climate, we are looking at, let us say, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, but the weather is, let us say, predictable up to 5 or 10 days. Now 5 to 10 days is absolutely nothing as compared to 50 or 100 years. Okay, and because you cannot predict it, so what Hasselman said was, all right, I cannot predict what is happening over here, so I will assume that whatever weather is there, it is random weather. Okay, now this may not make much sense to you, but mathematically he showed that if we make that assumption, then you can make predictions for long-term climate changes. And there is another very important contribution of Hasselman, there can be many factors which can actually increase the greenhouse gases. For example, volcanoes emit huge amounts of carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane. So is it possible that whatever the increase in greenhouse gas is there, whatever the increase in temperature is there, it is actually due to volcano, not because of us? Okay, so I like to relate all these things to a murder mystery. For example, you don't know, someone was killed, you don't know who killed that person. There are many suspects are there. Okay, then what do is fingerprinting analysis. All right, you send it to some forensic lab, and then you get back your forensic report. So that is basically what Hasselman did. He provided this forensic report, and you can see here that these are observations. The black curves are observations. These ones are actually due to just natural sources, means volcano and things like that. And finally, this one is including natural and including human effect. Okay, so you can see up until around 60. Okay, all the curves are like going side by side. There is not much difference. But after 1960, you can see that natural sources say that the temperature should approximately remain constant, but the temperature is actually increasing, and this curve is very scary actually. Why this curve is so very scary is, it is saying that after 1960, whatever the differences are there, it is actually due to our activity. Okay, natural sources are there, they are contributing, but whatever changes we are seeing, this is actually because of us. So these are the contributions of Manabe and Hasselman, and I think what they have done is, the most important thing what they have done is, they have answered many questions. Okay, questions such as, is the earth heating up? Yes. Is it due to greenhouse gases? Yes. Are we responsible? Yes. Okay, so you cannot escape. You cannot say, all right, I've closed my eyes and now the line in front of me has gone. Okay, I can go on and start using my instead of using a heater, I can burn coal also, because it is not due to us. It is due to us. You cannot escape that reality. All right. Next, I'll start with complex system, but I'll stop for 1 minute. So if you have any question, you want to say anything, then after that, we'll go to the other half of the Nobel Prize,
Sir,
which is, yes.
so why small systems occur most of the time in nature?
Again, there is no like answer to it. What you see is that you have these chaotic systems, and what happens is that in all these chaotic systems, this is a regularity that we see in all the chaotic system, that when the size is small, the frequency is large. It is just an experimental fact, and such kind of phenomenon are known as emergent phenomena. Okay, and these phenomena cannot be derived from the basic laws that you know. And that is, I think I stated this previously also, that that P.W. Anderson quote that I gave you, that even if you know all the basic laws, you cannot build the universe out of it. You cannot predict these kind of laws just by starting from the basic interactions that you know.
ओके सर, एक और क्वेश्चन है
हाँ, यस
सर, हम सिस्टम्स का मान लीजिए इनिशियल कंडीशन कंप्लीटली जानते हैं किसी भी सिस्टम का,
ओके, लेट मी जस्ट, ठीक है, आई थिंक जहां तक आपका क्वेश्चन जा रहा है, आप ये कहना चाह रहे हो कि अगर कंप्लीटली पता है तो क्या कंप्लीटली हमें फ्यूचर पता है उसका? दैट इज व्हाट
नो
यू
सर,
वांट।
नो सर, नो सर।
ओके, ओके, यस, व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन?
सर, हम कंप्लीटली अगर इनिशियल कंडीशन जानते हैं तो कुछ ना कुछ तो इन्फॉर्मेशन हम लॉस करेंगे उसको जानने के लिए, क्योंकि अगर इन्फॉर्मेशन में एक्स्ट्रा इन्फॉर्मेशन जानते हैं तो कोई ना कोई इन्फॉर्मेशन लॉस होता है।
अगर नहीं भी लॉस हो रहा है, इवन इफ यू डोंट कंसिडर द कंजर्वेशन ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, इवन इन दैट केस आल्सो, if you know but I think you are trying to make a comment, and I think that comment is right. Yes, you are right.
यस सर।
Sir,
Yes.
sir, how are factors related to volcanic eruptions?
I cannot go into much details. I don't want to speak for more than 1 hour. I've already spent 42 minutes actually. I don't know the answer. It is a complex system, and as I said, this is actually related to the previous question also, that why 1 over f law is there, or why volcanoes follow fractal laws. It is just that these emergent phenomena are present in complex systems. That's all. That's all I can say. So that if you have any complex system, then these kind of characteristics will be there.
Hasselmann's noise contributed to the factor of these climate results?
There are many ways of approaching a problem. Okay, in some cases what can happen is that the local fluctuations that are happening, that may not be important, which was the work related to Manabe. So that is why he did not take into account any kind of chaos. But in some cases, if you want to predict something, okay, so one of the example that was given on the Nobel Prize website was like, if you are taking a dog out for a ride, okay, now the dog is running chaotically here and there randomly, okay, now your overall speed is related to what the dog is doing. If it is just going along with you, then your speed will be higher. But if it is running around here and there chaotically, then even though the dog's behavior is chaotic, but your own behavior will follow a certain pattern. So the dog's movement is related to weather, and your own movement is related to climate. Okay, so in that sense, that is what the Hasselmann's work was.
Is dog motion chaotic or random?
Because you cannot predict anything in chaos. Chaos is deterministic. You cannot predict it. All right, but randomness is not predicted. Okay, so it is just because we cannot model chaos, that is why we take it as random. But chaotic systems are not random systems. They are deterministic system. Everything is known about that system. All right. So regarding the complex system, I want to quote a great man. He said, chaos is a ladder. Okay. So if you don't know him, then it's all right. But he said chaos is a ladder. But I want to say something else, that it is not the chaos that is the ladder. It is actually the edge of the chaos that is the ladder. And that is where the complex systems lie. They lie at the boundary of deterministic and chaotic systems. Okay, they lie at the boundary of equilibrium and chaos. So this brings us to the other protagonist of our story, that is Giorgio Parisi. So Giorgio Parisi, he obviously gave this explanation for these complex systems, which can be applied to a wide variety of systems. This is the work related to what he has done. You can read the order parameter spin glass, a function on the interval 0 to 1. Now again, I'm assuming like you have understood everything about this work, but let me still go on. And so I'll give a very basic introduction like what he did, because I don't have much time also. So again, this is related to the symmetry breaking concept that Rajesh discussed last time, that you have this system, and if it is a dissipative system, and if you leave a ball on this, it will settle to the bottom of the ball. Okay, but what happens is when you decrease the temperature, generally the symmetry is broken. Okay, and I gave this example last time also, that if you have a, let us say, gas of iron atoms, and if you keep on decreasing the temperature gradually, then what will happen is it will eventually condense into crystal. Okay, so obviously the random gaseous atoms are isotropic. They have a much higher symmetry as compared to some kind of a cube. So such kind of symmetry breaking happens in many systems, and this symmetry breaking is characterized by order parameter or order parameters. There can be more than one order parameter. How does it characterize? For example, this kind of symmetry breaking is that you will require two parameters. One you will require the magnitude, and the other one you will require is the phase. So what magnitude tells you is that how much along, like from the center, what is the distance of this bottom? That will give you the magnitude. And because the system can rest in infinite number of places, so if let us say the system has rested over here, then what you can say is, I will take this as my reference, and what is the angle between my reference and this system? That will give me the phase. Okay, so that is how what basically, if you have studied statistical mechanics, obviously you will know more about the order parameter than I do, but this is what order parameter does. It tells you how much, it tells you the magnitude of the symmetry breaking. So let us talk about glasses. Okay, now what happens is that obviously the first part is let us say crystalline material. Okay, now if I ask you the question, which of the remaining two is glasses? Okay, so you don't have to answer. Actually, I think no one can answer that which of these is glasses, because the glasses and liquids, they have almost the same disorder, or the same order, you can say, if you want to say it in the other way. All right, it is just that the liquids flow and the glasses don't. Glasses have rigidity. They are as rigid as crystals. Okay, and this kind of glasses actually Parisi studied. And these systems are very, very, very difficult to handle. And why they are very, very difficult to handle? Because when you are decreasing the temperature, these glasses, for example, in this case, you know where the atoms will settle, you know that. But in this case, how do you know where the atom will settle? You don't know that. There are infinitely many ground states for glasses. So that is why these systems are very, very difficult to study. And the actual system that he studied was spin glasses. So here I am giving one example. So what is happening here? You have this copper lattice, underlying copper lattice, and in this copper lattice you have iron atoms. Iron atoms behave like very tiny magnets. And these tiny magnets are spread out. They are spread out randomly in space. At a site they are, we don't know. Okay. And additionally, what is happening is that the direction in which they are pointing, that direction is fixed. Even though that direction is random overall, you cannot say like why it is pointing like this, why it is not pointing the other way, you cannot answer. But whichever way it is pointing, that direction is fixed. Now this, again, as I said, that this is a very difficult problem to solve, and related to this problem is what is known as magnetic frustration. So magnetic frustration is like this, like if we three people are there and we all hate each other. Okay, so like if I'm looking in this way, then the other will say no, I will look in that way. Okay, so if I've chosen my my like direction over here, sir has said all right, he is pointing in this way, I will point in this way. Now this guy is hating both of us. Now he doesn't want to point that way also, and he doesn't want to point that way also. So it leads to a frustrated system. Okay, and you cannot tell which one is the ground state, whether this one is the ground state, that one is the ground state, or it is a linear superposition of these two things. Okay, now I am not actually connecting these two pictures, but these two pictures are very much connected to each other. Again, I will not go into the details of that. So this is like the curve. So I like to attach this curve. For example, if you are looking in living in some like colony, okay, homes are there, okay, and there are let us say 100 homes, but 10 people are there, or 15, whatever you want to take, and either you hate that person or you like that person, and your feeling depend upon the distance. If you are very close to that person, you like that person. If he is your next neighbor, then you hate that person. If he is your next neighbor, then you again like that person, and so on. Okay, by the way, what is J here? Can anyone tell me? J. What is on the y-axis? On the x-axis I have R. What I am calling as feelings. Like, what is this J? Sorry? It is
Bessel
not,
function.
it is not actually the Bessel function. By the way, it is related to spin and magnetic materials. So what is J?
Sir, exchange integral.
Yeah, exchange integral. That is correct. So that is my like feelings parameter. Okay, if this exchange parameter is positive, you will have ferromagnetic interaction. If that factor is negative, you will have anti-ferromagnetic interaction. Okay. So what is the problem at hand is like these people are distributed in the colony randomly. I exactly know J. I have complete knowledge of J. I have this graph. I will just calculate R and I will know J. I will know my feelings towards that person. But that person is distributed randomly. That is the problem. So what people did was, again that person will again come Anderson, Edward Anderson model. What they said was, all right. So they said don't distribute people randomly. That means remove the space disorder, fix their position. But now distribute your feelings randomly. Distribute the value of J randomly. That is what they did. That is known as the Edwards Anderson model. So J is obviously not random. I have discussed all these things. The distribution in space is random. So this is what Edward Anderson Hamiltonian is. Okay. Now, if I tell you the system, people are very smart. They can write the Hamiltonian. Okay. But people are not smart enough to solve the Hamiltonian. So they wrote this Hamiltonian, in which case, as I said before, I will again not go into the details of this. They localize the spin, okay, and they assume easing spins. So if you have again studied about statistical mechanics, you must be knowing easing spins. Even if you don't know, basically it means either you will point in this direction or you will point in that direction. That's all. You will not point in the middle direction, something like that. All right. So, and how do you take J to be random? Okay, there are many ways in which you can take J random, and one interesting way to take J is like, for example, I am sitting here and let's say Ankush is sitting there. I don't know my feeling towards him. So what I will do, I flip a coin. If it comes out head, I will like him. If it comes out tails, I will not like him. All right, so that is known as the plus minus J model. Anyways, so I think I have to skip a lot of what I've prepared. Maybe I'll so this is the order parameter that this EA Hamiltonian, which we'll call as, or the EA model, Edwards Anderson model, this is the parameter that this is the order parameter. And what this order parameter does is it says that you have to take the time average of whatever you are having, quantity that you have. For example, in paramagnetic materials, what happens is that you have the spin is oriented in a random direction, but because that spin is completely free, therefore it can point in any direction and will keep on switching. So if you take time average of that particular magnetic moment, what will be its value? 0. All right. But in this model, what we are doing is, even though the direction of spin can be random, but we are saying, all right, you have decided this is your axis. Now don't change it, and it will not change. Okay, so that is what we do here. And at the end of the day, this again, I will try to wrap it up fast. Okay, so this is again, you cannot solve this particular model, and by the way, this picture you should always keep in mind. For example, this represents the energy landscape, and you can see that there in this energy landscape there are lots and lots of hills and valleys. Okay, and this is a very typical picture for glasses. You can see that there are many minima here, and they are very close to each other. Okay, so this is what it says, is that if you are lowering the temperature of glasses, you don't know that in which valley your glass will go, whether it will go here, it will go here, it will go here, you don't know that. That is why these systems are so very difficult. And these kind of systems, these spin glasses, they actually represent a prototype complex system. It has lots of properties which complex systems have. Okay. So I think replica method, you will always, I think if you read about this Nobel Prize, you will find this replica method being repeated again and again, that phrase of replica method. So that was actually not introduced by Parisi, it was actually introduced by these two gentlemen, Sherrington and Kirkpatrick. By the way, I should admit that I don't know whether they are male or female. So there were two scientists, Sherrington and Kirkpatrick, who actually solved this model and assumed a mean field interaction. Okay, and they did a replica. For example, they used replica method. What they did was they wanted to calculate the thermodynamics property. So they said, let me make many replica of the system. Okay, many replica of the system. I will calculate the thermodynamical properties and I'll calculate the average of everything. They did everything, and at the end, what it turned out was that the entropy turned out to be negative at low temperatures. So obviously, this was not a correct solution to the problem. And can you guess who gave the correct solution to the problem? Parisi. All right. So that is what Parisi did. He actually said that this order parameter, which was given by the Edward Anderson model, that is not sufficient. It is not sufficient to take only that as the order parameter. He introduced this order parameter which breaks the symmetry between these replica. Previously, what was happening was we assumed that all these replica have the same kind of symmetry, but Parisi said no, they don't have the same symmetry. And if you have to break the symmetry, then what you have to do, you have to tell what order parameter that is, and that is given by this spin overlap function. So again, I'll skip that part. I actually don't have much time to. So this is another important property that I want to emphasize, that these are non-self-averaging systems. Non-self-averaging, what that means is that if you might have again have done this in your statistical mechanics course, that if you have some finite size system, okay, and you calculate its thermodynamical properties, you will find that there are some fluctuations in that thermodynamical property, and you actually calculate that in statistical physics. And you find if you keep increasing the size of the thermodynamical system, that means if the number of particles in it are tending towards infinity, then those fluctuations go down and they actually disappear for an infinite system. Okay, that means the fluctuations in the thermodynamical property should die down as you take bigger and bigger systems. That does not happen for glasses. Those fluctuations do not die, doesn't matter how many number of particles you are taking for the spin glass. So that is what is meant by the non-self-averaging in spin glasses. There is this again I found on the Nobel Prize website, that like if you have a carom board and coins are placed on the carom board. Okay, this is a disordered system. Now the walls of the carom board are such that they can shrink. Okay, they can shrink. So if you shrink the walls of the carom board, what will happen is that your system will come into some configuration. We'll call that as the ground state. Okay. Now you take the same carom board again, you again shrink by exactly the same way, you will not get the same state again. Okay. So these are two replica of the same system. You took two replica, you decreased its temperature. Shrinking of wall corresponds to decrease in temperature. And every time you will arrive at a different configuration. Okay, so you can assume that these are very difficult systems to actually tame. Obviously that is where Parisi's contribution was there. Another very important concept was of ultrametricity. I will not go to the definition of ultrametricity, but I will tell you what ultrametricity is. It is saying, for example, if you are comparing any three replicas, okay, they will never lie on the same line. There will always be a hierarchy. Someone will be higher than the other. Two can be on the same line, that's all right, but the third one will have to be either up or down. Okay, and such kind of hierarchy we obviously have in many complex systems, obviously, and even in our daily lives also, right? We are trying to outsmart everyone. Why? Because we want to climb up that tree. All right. And kinmanship also, you know that, right? Because for example, these two are like siblings, these are cousins. All right, these siblings have the same parents, they have different parents, but these two were having the same parent and things like that. Okay, खानदान जिसको बोलते हैं, हाँ? So this was again very important concept, and why I'm showing this, because it does not yes, it does explain the properties of the spin glasses, but this also tells you why this all this whatever theory that Parisi has developed, why it is applying to so many different varieties of systems. You remember it was mentioned there, from atomic to planetary systems. Okay, and I will show you one more another very important or very interesting application of Parisi's work. But all these things, you see that hierarchy, sometimes what happens is that you have to build hierarchy into your system, you have to put it there by hand, but it is arriving naturally in this work, in this Parisi's work. So it is again related to symmetry breaking. I will not go into the details of this. Yeah. So I think I have discussed most of it. There is this very important last point, which is option paralysis. Now what happens in the spin glasses are, they are very sluggish. They don't want to go to their ground state. All right, and it like literally takes infinite amount of time to actually go to the ground state. And why that happens is because there are so many ground states, they are all almost equivalent to each other. All right. So for example, if you are like applying for, let us say, PhD, you get admission or you get a call from all the IITs, and all the IITs are completely equivalent to each other. Distance doesn't matter for you. What you will do? You will spend like infinite amount of time just deciding where should I go, where should I take the admission, because everything is so equivalent to each other. So that is what is happening for spin glasses also, and that is what is meant by option paralysis over here. All right. I just want to finish now. Like again, this also I have discussed, like why complex systems and Parisi's work or spin glasses, how they are connected to each other. He obviously provided these new mathematical techniques which you can apply to different systems. I have discussed actually all these things, so I am just skipping it. And this you can see that I've listed some of the systems where you can apply all these results. So back to the price, you can see that now I hope you have seen some common theme here. Okay, where we are saying that you have order, you have fluctuations. Okay, in that system you can compute something, you can calculate some results which you can further use. Okay, now we have talked about weather, we have talked about pendulum, we have talked about spin glasses. All right, and all these systems, disorder, chaos and non-linearity is built into all those systems. So this question was asked to these people whether it is a message for world leaders, because there is going to be a United Nations Climate Change Conference in UK. So what these people said was, the message is that whatever we are talking about, it is based on solid science. It is not as if we are guessing all these things. So that was the message. These are some of the references that I have used, and I think one more slide should be there. All right, so thank you for your patience. Is it playing? Yeah. So can you guess what is happening here?
सर
Is
वो
it?
फ्रैक्शंस बन रहे हैं सर क्लाउड्स के।
Uh,
These are birds, I think.
these are birds. Yes. And do you think that these birds are so intelligent that they can design such beautiful patterns? Huh? They must
Yes,
be
sir.
okay. Uh, I was
सर
looking for a
नेचर है
different
सर,
uh,
इट्स
actually
नेचुरल सर।
yeah, it is all natural. And actually what happens is obviously birds cannot define or at least they cannot orchestrate such complex patterns, but still such complex and beautiful patterns are emerging. You see, what is happening is that let us say that there are 3 birds involved. One bird is flying in a certain direction, that bird gets tired, it moves back, another bird takes his place. So the bird is actually interacting only with its nearest neighbor, let us say. And it is such simple laws, such simple connectivity just with the nearest neighbor, that is what matters. And still these thousands and thousands of birds are giving rise to such emergent phenomena which are so complex and which are so beautiful. So that is the final message from my side. Thank you. Questions? Offline, online, anyone?
सर मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है
Yes.
सर, ये
What is your name?
सर
आपका नाम क्या है?
रितांशु।
रितांशु. हाँ, हाय रितांशु.
हेलो सर। सर मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है कि केओस मॉडल में भी एक कंडीशंस होता है जहाँ पे मेरे को जो सिस्टम्स आउटपुट मिलेगा सोल्यूशन वो स्टेबल हो सकता है।
हम्म.
तो सर ये जो मॉडलिंग किया गया है अर्थ का,
हाँ.
तो ये केओटिक के टेम्परेचर बढ़ा दिया है, लेकिन एक वो केओटिक सेंस में भी एक इनिशियल कंडीशन होगा ना जहाँ पे हम लोग एक अच्छा इन्वायरमेंट पा सके सर्वाइवल करने के लिए।
हाँ, ऑब्वियसली इतने सालों से था तभी हम लोग यहाँ पे हैं.
यस सर, बस यही क्वेश्चन।
That is correct. Okay.
ओके सर, थैंक यू सर।
Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful talk. We all got to know so many things about chaotic behavior of complex systems. And I would like to thank our audience for so be patient. And thanks for joining online for our this talk. Thank you.